Hi, I'm Alex Stutchbury and welcome to ARTClass, a series of videos teaching you the key skills needed to create great art. Today I'm going to teach you about the Lino printing process and how to produce really successful outcomes. Here are the objectives. Do I understand the Lino printing process, and can I safely cut my Lino block? And can I produce successful printed outcomes? Now, there are many different types of printmaking that you can produce, from monoprints to lino prints, or etchings, or even screen printing like Andy Warhol. Lino printing is one of the more accessible ones, and that's the one I'm showing you today. Now, what you want to print it of is completely up to you. I'm going to focus on a Sumatran rhino, sadly an endangered species, and I think it would be a good subject matter to use to try and promote awareness around the world. Let's get started. First, get your piece of lino and draw around the outside so you know how large your picture needs to be. Then, sketch in the main shape or object that you want to print. Once you've done that, trace this picture starting with the outer box. That will help and allow you to keep your tracing paper and the paper underneath lined up, and then trace all of the lines that you have already drawn. Now here's an extra stage that I would suggest and recommend that you try if it's your first lino print. Either using the original drawing or tracing it out again, colour in all of the sections that you want to print out. So everything that you're wanting to come out in the print. Block it in with pen because it prevents you from trying to shade in and using more than two tones. Once you've done that, and in this case, having added more detail in the background to frame, I can now trace these extra pieces out. And then my lino tracing is ready. Make sure no dark bits clash or overlap, so each section is well defined. Make sure you scribble firmly over your tracing paper because you need it to print out clearly onto the lino block, and it can sometimes be hard to see. And this is a key bit to remember. Flip the image over now. Trace back to front on purpose, because then your print will come out the correct way once printed. Try and use your hand, which isn't holding the pencil, to clamp the tracing paper to the edge of the lino so it doesn't shift and it doesn't distort your tracing as you're going over all of the lines. This bit's a little bit tedious, but it's worth taking time and doing it correctly. Otherwise, it could affect your lino when printing. Okay, we're ready to start cutting, but a quick word of warning. You've got to be extremely careful because lino cutting tools often have a metal serrated blade, which can allow you to do really precise cutting, but are extremely dangerous if you don't follow the correct cutting method. So listen to the instructions. There are two types of cutting blades, a V-shaped one for narrow outlines and a U-shaped one to carve wider areas. Now get a bench hook and hook it to the edge of your table so it can't move around when cutting. And then put your block resting against the top or side edges and always cut away from you. It's important that you're cutting away and using the bench hook edges to stop the lino block from moving. So if you slip, the blade will cut towards or get stuck into the block hook edge rather than into your hand or fingers. This will prevent any serious injuries. Now it's a case where you have to spend some time, which can be a little bit fiddly at first, carving all the outlines out. And remember, you're not carving the dark areas that you're wanting printing. You're carving around those areas, keeping those raised. All the carved bits obviously will then sit lower on the block, and when you're using your ink later, the ink will sit within those grooves rather than printing out, leaving the raised sections to be the ones which stand out. Now I've swapped over here to the U-shaped blade so I can carve larger areas out when I haven't got so much detail. So large surfaces of the nose of this rhino can be just carved with the larger tool. You can always use the V-shaped cutter to refine any small edges at the end. And then something I would suggest you do is brush all the offcuts to one side, put a bit of newsprint over the top, and with a pastel edge, try and create a rubbing, just so you can see if there are any little bits that still stand out that you need to cut away before the printing begins. So now you've cut your lino, here's the fun part, the printing process. The printing process. I would lay out the table in 3 sections. An area with a laminate where you can roll out the ink, a section where you can roll the ink onto the lino, and then a clean roller where you can roll out the print at the end. So put a lump of printing ink onto your roller and then roll up and down and side to side, trying to get an even layer on the roller. You don't have to spread it out far. Then roll onto your lino. You have to keep going back and getting more ink. You must make sure that the ink has a kind of slightly sticky, tacky sound when you're rolling it out, so you know you've got enough on both the roller and then onto the lino itself. Make sure it's got a shine to it. Once you've done that, you can then place the lino over to the cleanest area and put the paper that you're wanting to print onto over the top, and then with a clean roller, press really firmly over all the sections. Make sure the edges and corners bend slightly over the actual lino block. Then you know you've pressed firmly enough. And then carefully peel and reveal. Make sure you put enough ink on so you don't have patches where it hasn't printed out, often the corners and edges of the problem sections. And don't smudge around the edge with the ink. So there you have it, the lino printing process. And it can produce some really cool, strong, vibrant, bold outcomes. So give it a go. And if you'd like to try something more challenging, watch the second video, which shows how to produce a lino print, but also using mixed media in the style of some of Andy Warhol's more elaborate designs. So I look forward to seeing how you get on. My name's Alex Stutchbury. Goodbye.